welcome to all of our CYC viewers for a new episode of Books Corner. We have with us Shereen Marcus, and as you know, she has made this wonderful book called An Immigrant Church No Longer, talking a little bit about the youth ministry in the Orthodox Church, and she's done so much research going into this. But as a result of this research, she has made something even more needed in our church, which is a Bridges to Orthodoxy teen curriculum. So Shereen, can you just tell us a little bit about how you got started? What made you pursue creating a curriculum?
Yes, thank you for that, Madonna. Yes, so in my book, we talk about the curriculum problem and how I developed this curriculum, and we launched this website, Bridges to Orthodoxy. So there's a long answer and a short answer to your question, but the narrative is probably something that all parents can relate to. It's something I talked about before. Basically, I have two boys of my own, and I had, at a very early age, a narrative that you guys can probably all relate to, them fighting me about going to Sunday school. Mom, please don't make me go to Sunday school. It's boring, Mom. I don't want to go. And I remember sitting in on their classroom and thinking to myself, gosh, not a whole lot has changed since I was a kid. You know, the classrooms are still crowded, the teachers still don't have the right tools to manage these kids. They just came from a 2-hour liturgy, so the kids are tired and they don't really want to pay attention. And the thing is, I just think that we no longer have the excuse that we're a new immigrant church, that we really have been in this country for a long time, and it's really time to reach these youth, and otherwise we're going to see a fall away. And each generation, we're going to lose this youth. They're not going to be tied to the church. They're not going to have their own identity in the church. So I kind of made a promise to them that I was going to try and make things better. And at the time that I made the promise, I had no idea what I was doing. I just said, I'm going to try and make things better, guys, I promise. And I remember at first it was just going to other churches, sitting in on their classrooms, seeing how do they do youth ministry? Do they do things differently than us? How does it go? And then researching curriculum and this rabbit hole that it went through. I had no idea. And I started writing curriculum, but I kind of felt ill-equipped. So then I, enrolled into a master's program with the Antiochian House of Studies. And then I earned a, master's in Orthodox theology with the youth ministry effort. And somehow God just made a way for me to muster the time to just do this because I had a passion to do it. And I felt that it was worthwhile to do it.
Well, I can definitely say we are so thankful that you mustered up the time to come up with this curriculum, Shereen, and I appreciate how you came about to doing it, but just out of curiosity, what would you say sets this curriculum apart from others? Or in other words, what is the Bridges to Orthodoxy strategy?
That's a great question. So the reason I came up with the name Bridges to Orthodoxy is I wanted to make sure that our youth in the North America area, States and Canada, they really could find that bridge, their practical life bridges to this ancient faith, that it's really a personal faith for them. And this is going to be kind of a mind shift for what Coptic people are used to, because in the Coptic church, with the curriculum that I have seen so far is, 7th grade has a curriculum, and then 8th grade has a set curriculum, and then 9th grade has a set curriculum. The Bridges to Orthodoxy strategy is that all of middle school, all of high school, they're learning the same thing at the same time, but at differing depths. And that every year the content changes, but they're all learning the same thing at differing depths. And this allows for a lot of advantages from the parish's perspective, from the teens' perspective, and from the family's perspective. So from the parish's perspective, this allows for an amazing amount of flexibility. So sometimes you have parishes that are huge, and they do have a separate classroom for 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, but then you have others that are really small, and they might have 2 7th graders that are stuck in a classroom with a bunch of 9th graders, and the next year the configuration is different. And this way you can arrange your classrooms however you need to, and you will never run out of content because the content is fresh every year. We upload new content every year for all your middle school, all your high school, and it continually rotates so that every class has brand new material. For the teens, it's a great advantage because this is exactly how the Bible was meant to be read. You're supposed to read a story over and over again in different stages of your life. Noah's Ark, that's not just a kindergarten lesson. You're supposed to read it again when you're in middle school and in high school and as an adult, because every time you read it, you're in a different stage of life and it means something different to you. And then that family engagement, what was really, really important to me for Bridges to Orthodoxy was bridging that gap with the families. All too often, how often do you ask your kids, What did you learn in Sunday school?
I don't know.
I don't know, Mom.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was really important to me that we had one key takeaway, one sentence that we could tell parents, this is what your kids learned, and that they can continue that conversation on the ride home. They can have that Sunday experience in the car. All of their kids, no matter what age they were, all had the same lesson, but in different perspectives. So their 7th grader learned about David and Goliath, but so did their 12th grader, and they all had that lesson in a different way, in a different depth, and they could all contribute to that conversation on the ride home from their own unique stage of life, different perspective. And it was easy to connect the parents to that lesson. So this is the strategy, which is, I know, a mind shift for the Coptic church and different from what they're used to, but I believe has so many benefits. And will be a game changer.
I agree totally. I really love the way that you came up with that because truly, I mean, even biblically speaking, when we read something, you're right, every stage of life you get a new depth out of it that you probably didn't consider before, which is different than the traditional grade by grade structure, right? Because once you're done with one grade, you kind of like never see that thing again and it kind of loses its connection to your own life. So I really appreciate that.
Right, and absolutely. I mean, it's not the same thing as academics where,
Right.
you know, you're used to learning, you know, addition and then you move on to multiplication, then you move on to calculus. That's not the way the Bible works. You're supposed to read it over and over again. So it's kind of a mind shift, but I believe that this is the way the Bible's supposed to be read and supposed to be studied.
Definitely, it's a continuous learning experience. I love that, Shereen. Thank you so much. Can you also tell our viewers here just a little bit more about the content of the curriculum? How it's structured? Is it by the month, by week? What are we getting when we look at it?
Okay, so if you go on the website and you pick a unit and you download it, you know, what do you get? That's a fair question. So the units that I created and the content is uploaded on a continual basis, so they're always fresh and new content. They're month by month type units, and each month has its own unique theme. And when you download the units, you'll get PDF lesson plans, which are very much like scripts. You don't have to follow the script verbatim, but we really, really made it user-friendly so that if teaching is not your thing or you don't know how to put it together, it's really easy to use those scripts. There's also PowerPoint slides that have everything in a visually appealing way so that you have those visual aids to help with the teaching. There's video links to break up with the monotony of you just teaching. You have some 3 to 4 minute video clips to help illustrate a point. The lesson plans include illustration games, large group style type games, but they also include small group discussion style, intimate type of discussion style questions, as well as application activities and worksheets if that application activity requires a worksheet. They'll have those worksheets provided as well. And then the themes will have each week kind of build up on that theme. So for example, a theme might be trust in God, and every week will build up on that theme of trusting in God.
Wow, I really appreciate the way that you did that. There really is something for every type of learner, which I think is something that's so unlike the way that we grew up in our Sunday school classrooms. And I really appreciate how you were able to make it so that there's a theme, and then each week kind of builds on that theme so they can dig deeper and have time to mull it over and ask questions. It's not a one and done kind of thing. I love that. Stay tuned, please, to our CYC viewers. We're going to take a really short break, and when we come back, we're going to ask Shereen a little bit more about her process, how she comes up with this content, and so many more questions. You're not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our CYC viewers for a continuation of Books Corner. Today we are talking with Shereen Marcus again about her curriculum that she created called Bridges to Orthodoxy, which, as you know, is a spin-off of all the research she did going into An Immigrant Church No Longer, which is a book that she wrote. And we talked a little bit with Shereen before about her curriculum, how she came up with it, why she wanted to write a curriculum. And today we're continuing the conversation. Shereen, how do you come up with the content? I mean, there is so much depth there. And who writes the materials? Is there an approval process? I'm sure we all would like to know that.
Those are great questions. So I am the primary author of the materials, and as I mentioned before, I do have a master's in Orthodox theology with a youth ministry emphasis, and I did that because I wanted to feel that I had a little bit more knowledge. I didn't feel that I had all the skills there to do it. I have a natural gift for writing. I like writing. I love kids. I love goofiness. I love games, but I wanted that a little bit more of the theological background, so I did get the master's. But I do have also a small staff of contributors. Actually, Madonna here, you are one of my contributors. She's Madonna, for all of you guys listening, she's actually a teacher. She's in her vocation. She's in education. She's a teacher of elementary school ages. So I have a small group of contributors that are like Madonna. They have the theological background, but also have, the educational background, where they'll look over the materials. And a lot of times they'll come up with ideas that are more age appropriate, or they'll come up with a game or an illustration that will hit the point home that I didn't even think about. So that's really important for me to check those ideas to make sure that they're age appropriate and culturally relevant for the age group that I'm written in. I've also been really blessed to have various clergy in the Coptic tradition as well as in the Eastern tradition to look over the process, to help me through the process, and to review a lot of the materials that I've written. I don't have a specific approval process, but what I will tell you, and what people don't necessarily understand when they go to the website, is this wasn't something that just happened overnight.
Right.
I was writing materials for a good 5 years before we launched the website, and I had test church across the country, across America, in different dioceses, all over the States, and actually one in Canada, that were testing the materials and using the materials and sending me feedback. And within those parishes and within those dioceses, their bishops, their clergy reviewed the materials and at least informally approved it for use in those dioceses. So it was a long journey before I launched the website. I just launched the website in January. So the materials have been looked over by several different layers of people, of clergy, of educators. It's not just a one-woman show or anything like that. Also during my studying, I had professors reviewing my work, because this was part of my work in my studies. So both in terms of theological correctness and age appropriateness, I do feel confident in the materials that we produce.
I mean, wow, Shereen, you put so much work into this. And just to kind of reiterate for our viewers, I mean, this was something that was like 5 years in the making at least, right? I'm sure you dreamed it up even before that, right? So you went and got your master's in theology, you went and started writing this curriculum, which before we even got together, you already had 4 years of it written. So this was definitely something that was on your mind all the time. Then you went and sent it to test churches, who then tried it and gave live feedback to tell you what was working, what wasn't working. Then you had clergy and all sorts of bishops looking at this and approving or telling you to change things or whatever needed to be done. So this was a long journey for you. But I guess with all of that was going on, there had to have been some big challenges along the way. What would you say was like your biggest challenge with coming up with this curriculum?
That's a tough question. There were a lot of challenges. I think the biggest challenge for me in general in writing the content is striking the right balance between topics that I know teens really want to hear about. They really want to hear about those socially relevant topics, things like gossip and judging and purity and dating. They really want to hear about those topics, and they want those interwoven into the curriculum. But then I know that there's the topics that the parishes really care about, that's really important to their Orthodox faith. Things like the ecumenical councils and the sacraments and the Orthodox saints and the Coptic feasts and things like that. Things that are really important to the parishes to have in there, so that people have an understanding of their Orthodox faith and they can make their faith personal to them. But sometimes those things sound like history lessons and they're not super exciting to teens, but they're so important to have interwoven into the curriculum. And for me personally, I thought it's really, really important to me personally that the teens know how to read the Bible and know how to study the Bible. So for me, I really wanted to incorporate biblical study type topics into the curriculum. So for me, the challenge was, how do I adequately balance these types of topics into a well-rounded curriculum that any parish can pull and find value in? So what I ended up doing was looking at it in a holistic year-by-year approach. So for any given school year, we'll have rotating themes that will have social topics, biblical study topics, and Orthodox faith topics, so that in any given school year, you'll have an equal weight of each of those types of topics integrated into the school year, but it's still making each one of those culturally relevant to the lives that the teens are living right now, so that they can still make those topics important to their Orthodox faith and the life that they're living now.
Wow, so this curriculum really runs the gamut of all the subject matter. And I know, again, as we were growing up in our Orthodox church and going to Sunday school, it kind of always followed the feasts or the saint stories of the day and things like that. So we kind of always got the same picture. But now this covers everything, and it's in an open basis, right? That's really awesome, Shereen. Thank you. Well, since along those lines, right, no two congregations are the same. No two parishes are the same. Some churches have certain needs, other churches have different needs. So I guess it brings us to the question, when churches are looking for curriculum, what kinds of things should they be considering? What kinds of topics should they be looking for when they're looking for a curriculum?
That's a great question also. It's really hard to answer it in generalizations, and especially since, when you were talking about, other churches that are really, really used to just talking about Coptic feasts and following the calendar, because I get those questions all the time. How come this Sunday we're not talking about the Feast of the Cross or something like that? And you're right, it's really hard to have a general platform that's going to be catered to every single church. This is what I would say to parishes. They need to first take some time to precisely define what is the mission statement of their Sunday school program. And where does that Sunday school program fit into the overarching theme of their youth ministry? And I get into that in my book too, because Sunday school cannot be the end-all be-all of their youth ministry, because this is just a 1-hour segment on Sunday into the lives of the youth. So that you cannot cram everything. You can't cram Coptic hymns and Agbeya prayers and Synaxarium and recap of the gospel and Coptic feast lessons all into a Sunday school. And I really, really encourage parishes to pick one mission statement for their Sunday school and only one purpose, so that when they're choosing their curriculum, they can focus on a curriculum that will help further that one goal, that one picked mission statement for their Sunday school, and not be so concerned that they're not covering all these other things. Because youth ministry is so much more than just Sunday school. So they can launch other programs if they feel that it's really important. If Coptic hymns are super important, of course they are. They can launch some other program, some other medium for that purpose, instead of trying to cram it all into the Sunday school experience. And as far as curriculum goes, specifically curriculum, I think it's really, really important that you find one that's going to set your volunteers up for success. You want volunteers to be the backbone of your youth ministry. You want them to make those relationships with their kids. You don't want them trying to create lessons, because it's not, that's a really specific skill set, and not everyone has that specific skill set, but there's so many great servants out there that are so great with kids, and those are the ones you want in the classrooms. Those are the ones you want in Sunday school, because they're going to be having that relationship with the kids, and they're the great role models. So you want to find those kinds of volunteers, and then you want to find resources where you're equipping them to be successful in their service. And if less important, just try not to find something that's the magic cure-all of everything, because no curriculum is going to be the magic cure-all. It's really going to be the backbone of your service is going to be those volunteers.
So ironically, you created this curriculum knowing it is not actually the most important piece of the Sunday school ministry.
Actually, Madonna, that is why I created the curriculum. The reason I created the curriculum is because I wanted to take that burden off the volunteers, off of the most important part of youth ministry. The backbone of youth ministry, I will say it a million times, are the volunteers. Right. Those are the ones that are making the relationships with the kids. Let's take that burden off of them. Let's give them the resource. Let's give them the tools for success. My hope is that this resource equips them to do their job better and to really, really be there for our kids.
So instead of cramming to try to make a lesson plan quickly, these volunteers trying to figure out how to reach the kids and come up with ideas, you have taken that piece of the puzzle out of the equation, and now they just get to have a relationship because it's already built in for them, right? That's amazing, Shereen. And so inevitably now, our viewers hopefully are going to go to www.bridgestoorthodoxy.com, and they're going to look at this curriculum, right?
Yep.
And what are they going to see next to it is a price tag. They're going to see a price tag. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers are thinking, the way we grew up, things for the church are volunteer basis and they are a service. Why then should a parish pay for a curriculum?
Well, I want to say first is that I'm not telling anybody to go and pay for a curriculum. There's a lot of free resources out there, and like I said before, if you define your mission statement for your Sunday school and you find that a free resource helps you with that mission, go ahead and use the free resource. But at the same token, that's exactly what we've been doing for many, many years. And so if you find that what we've been doing for many, many years hasn't been working, then maybe try something different. And you really do get what you pay for. I was talking to the same point recently with another Orthodox organization that makes educational materials. And the thing is that our Orthodox churches for so many years have been fine with good enough when it comes to our youth. Right. We invest money in so many things in our church, but for some reason the youth have not been worth the investment. And I think when you find something to be valuable, you invest in it. And the youth are definitely valuable. They're definitely worth the investment, at least in my opinion. And if you look at some of the Protestant or other non-denominational, non-Orthodox churches, they put out some of the most beautiful, highly professional materials. And it just does pain me that we are just satisfied, or we have been satisfied with good enough. So if churches have decided that, it is time for a change with their youth ministry, that it hasn't been working, then I do encourage them to try something different, something that they haven't tried before.
In our churches, they put a lot of money into building these beautiful cathedral-type churches, which are beautiful, and they're a great connection back to our roots. However, we all know a church is more than just four walls, right? So it's worth adding this into the piece of the price tag, I guess you could say, of building a church. Shereen, I want to say thank you so much for coming and for giving our viewers a little bit more to think about when it comes to the curriculum. And again, if you would please just visit the website and take a look. It's www.bridgestoorthodoxy.com. And if you have questions, I know that Shereen would be happy to give an email. If you could tell them how they can reach you and ask questions.
Absolutely. You can definitely email me at bridgestoorthodoxy@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a sample lesson plan, answer any questions, show you the scope of the school year, and definitely there are some sample lesson plans in my book as well if you've been curious about what our lesson plans look like.
Thanks. You, Shereen, and thank you to all of our viewers out there, and we'll see you next time.